I thought, as a citizen, I had the right to go and observe the election process, and I just felt like I needed to do it. You know, sometimes you just feel like you need to go do something. So I couldn't get away that nagging feeling that I needed to go down there. And I did, and I thought, well, yeah, I'll go and I'll watch everything that I think I need to, and I'll go home and I've done it. So instead of thinking about it all the time. So I went, and I was really very surprised at what I found. In fact, it broke my heart that I found the process so vulnerable, and the limited ability that I had to observe the election. I observed Multnomah County, and I could give you a long list of things that I found, but a couple of things that I found: very limited access. I had to stand outside the room and look through a window across the room to places I couldn't even see what was going on. I saw the VAT team leader, which is voter assistant team leader. She went and asked temporary employees to print out registration cards of voters. And she had a computer with a printer at her desk, and she could have printed those from her own login if she wanted to, but she chose not to. She wanted the temporary people to. And I thought, why was she doing that? And so I asked. I was never allowed to ask any election worker anything. I always asked the guard that watched me to go and ask them, and he couldn't figure out why she was doing it either. So he got permission for me to ask her directly, and she just started sweating and backed away from me and said she had to go do other things. So I brought it up to the elections director, and, well, at first the assistant, because that's who I had to go through first, and then the elections director. And they all said, oh, it's nothing, she's just doing her job. And so she said she had to have the registration card when she went out to see these people that needed help. But she said, I always have them re-register because their signatures are getting ineligible. So I could see some of that, but since she said she had to sign the new registration card every time it was her practice to do that, it made me concerned that when she brought back these cards and these ballots at the same time, there really wasn't a need to do it. Either bring it back like all of our ballots would go in and it either matched or it didn't, or bring back a new registration card that would be on file so that their signature matched. But why print out numerous registration cards? And if you needed them, why not print them from your own computer where we can see what's going on, rather than these temporary employees, which will be gone in a couple of weeks, and we have no record of who printed out this registration card. So that was a great concern. I didn't see them following the law on destroying the unused ballots on election night. That was an ongoing battle for some time. I was limited in my ability to go throughout the building, so there was a lot of ballots that were being entered into upstairs into the elections office. I couldn't see those. They said I could have access to the process, but I didn't have any right to see anything except for just a little sampling of things. When I went downstairs to the election boards, it was a room bigger than this as far as across the room. It actually would go clear across the hallway, and there were tables scattered throughout the room. And I could see pretty much what happened on the first two tables. I couldn't see the actual, what was on the ballot, but I could see what they were doing. And we saw people, as an election board, not working together. So there might have been a bipartisan election board, but they were processing them individually, not as a group. And that's the reason you have a bipartisan group, is so that you collaborate and you have different parties and they all agree on it. So, but the other people on the other side of the room, there were boxes in front of their tables, and all I could see was the top of their heads. I had no idea what they were doing. So I brought other people in, and we started asking for better access. And we didn't get it at a lot of the times. And so I went to the county commissioners, because we were home rule, and county commissioners worked with us some. We got a little more access. I eventually went to the county auditor. Then I started going to the state elections, the legislative session, because I noticed the rules were changing all the time, and I wanted to know why they were changing. I didn't know. I'm just a citizen, I didn't know all of the process, so I just kind of learned things as I went along, because when I came in 2010, here they are processing the ballots before Election Day. I'm going, you can't do that. And they passed a bill that said they could process them up to 7 days early. But by doing that, they disconnected the printer port from the printout, so we don't have this running printout of the count of the ballots that we could compare at the end to see if it matched the Unity machine. In Multnomah County, we had 6 scanners that had printouts as they tabulated the ballots as they went along. Then electronically it was sent, all of those 6 scanners were sent over to a Unity machine, which tabulated the 6 scanners. So if you took the printers offline, you didn't know what was going on for those 7 days before the election. They accumulated over here in the Unity machine, but we really couldn't compare at the end. We didn't have that second check, so we lost that in 2010. So we started watching that, and I heard about True the Vote about that time. And so that's just a little bit of my background, so you'll know where I'm coming from. I'm going to play, I met Catherine early on because I was really trying to educate myself about the process of being an observer. And I needed help terribly bad. And I'll see if I can get this off here. So she started helping us. She's got a video here. I'm going to see if I can bring up for you.
The Election Integrity Project will be conducted in partnership with True the Vote and the Election Law Center.
According to a voter watchdog group, 5 Kansas counties may be in violation of federal law.
True the Vote has continued training volunteers, and they have left the confines of Houston. True the Vote says it will have trained 1 million poll watchers. This True the Vote thing has gone big time.
It's a very pessimistic philosophical divide in this country between those of us who believe in the rule of law and those of us who believe in election integrity and those who enable criminal conduct.
Things are heating up. Accusations are flying about irregularities, even criminal activity during early voting.
They're in the building. They're not 100 feet out of the door. They were helping them vote.
Everywhere. They're going to be everywhere.
The 2012 election cycle was an eye-opening experience for True the Vote. It was really the first time that we took the national stage in politics, and our goal was to make an impact on the debate of an election that would go on to become one of the most expensive and most polarizing that we've had in the history of our country. It was amazing to see how quickly this organic movement spread. As our effort grew and our research made national headlines, it was encouraging to see that the country was on our side. Now, with November behind us, what we are seeing is that the effort to derail citizen engagement is more organized than it has ever been. The concept of voting rights has shifted over time. We're wired to think about suffrage and the civil rights era, but through the years, with litigation and legislation and highly polled messaging, what we're seeing is that the machine politician is poised to win every time, and the individual rights of the voters are being increasingly left out of the loop. True the Vote works to educate and empower citizens to use all of their rights as voters. We're controversial because we threaten the machine. If you perform a quick survey of election laws being pushed through state legislatures, you will see that there is a great divide in visions for our country. On one hand, you'll see proposals that are standard in just about every industrialized nation in the world. We're seeing states propose legislation like being a citizen so that you can vote, or actually voting where you live, or using photo voter identification at the polls. In In fact, time after time, polls show that 75% of the country supports these kinds of initiatives. Then on the other hand, we see a large number of states considering laws that seem to take individual responsibility completely out of the process. Priorities in election law are changing. There was a time when laws were written so that citizens could be sure they would have an opportunity to register, that they could vote of their own free will, that their vote would count and be counted. And if they had a question, their local administrator's door was always open. We've seen a shift in the past 6 years. Campaigning methods have changed drastically, and now winning an election doesn't have an awful lot to do with who has the best argument or ideas, but it has a whole lot to do with who can mobilize the most bodies to the polls. With the advent of data politics, politicians have been hard at work rewriting the laws to comply with their campaign models. But at what cost? There's great pressure right now to pass a host of legislation around state capitals that have lofty goals and great intentions. They promise to bring convenience to the voting process, but the reality is they're only convenient for campaigns, and the voters suffer. With each of these laws being considered, we're promised expanded voting rights and a more pleasant experience. The reality is election administrators are generally given little to no money to help enforce these new laws, only adding to confusion and delays in the process. But that's not a campaign organizer's problem. Campaigns benefit from these new rules because it allows them to harvest data on the taxpayer's dime, and the faster that they can track your file, the better. Progressive activists aren't stupid. They know that sweeping reforms are going to be hard to get past the governor's desk, let alone a legislative committee. These activists needed a voting experience that was so bad, so slow, so inconvenient, that Americans would demand fundamental transformation. Their ideal vision for our voting systems is no secret. They want complete federalization of our elections, and all the policy steps up until this point have just been intermediary. These activists were looking for something, anything, that would justify their desire to federalize elections, and they thought they found it in the long lines during early voting. Politicians, media figures, even the President of the United States bemoaned the sorry state of our elections in the 21st century. You know, I wonder if they ever stopped to think that their haphazard last-minute rule changes might have been a factor in those long lines. With long lines supposedly plaguing our nation, Washington and the activist community sprang into action, impaneling a commission by executive order to study our elections. Washington has put every local election official and engaged voter on notice. You see, the feds have never seen a problem in the states that they didn't think could be fixed in D.C. If citizens do not stand their ground, we are going to see the greatest transfer of power in American history. True the Vote's top priority in 2013 is to educate and engage voters across the nation, inspiring them to make full use of their rights. We will educate millions of citizens about the rights that they stand to lose as Washington prepares to fix our elections. Together, we can stop this. The power of citizen engagement can stop this slow-moving train wreck. Our founders intended for the people to run their elections, but that prescription for our republic is being threatened. We're here right now, at this time in history. We have a chance to turn this thing around. Are you willing to do what it takes to stop it?
So I have to tell you, before I go on, that eventually, through working with the elections director at Multnomah County, we got a lot of improvements and have a lot better access to the election observation process now. We even got some super observers that were able to go anywhere they wanted in the building. I forgot what else I was going to say. What we heard about happened in Clackamas County, we observed it happening in Multnomah County for years, and we saw people changing the ballots. And it really upset us. We told people about it, and they would go over and try to do correction afterwards, corrective education. And so now when you go down there in the election board rooms, the people, when they wait to change the ballot, they put all the ballots that have a question in the middle, and then they stand up, the four of them, and one will point, and the other one, they are very obvious with their body language, and the other one will make the change so that they're working together. It's very obvious that they're working together, and that's a great improvement. And I think because citizens got involved, they responded to that, and I really appreciated it.
Can you explain what you mean by changing the ballot? How can they change a vote?
They would put a white sticker over the mark, and they put a red stick. They would take a red mark, and they would mark the other choice.
Why? How can they do that?
They did it. We watched it. Not just me. There were several people that observed that.
Yeah, but you're saying the observers were standing there watching them do it.
We're standing outside the room, looking in.
Who were the people that were pointing?
Okay, before, like in 2008, there would be 4 people at the table, and they would work individually, not as a team. And some of them would take a white sticker and put it over the choice that was marked, and they would take their red pin and mark the other choice.
So I was wondering, maybe Chris can clarify, is what you're talking about is when there's a ballot that has like an error or something on it? Do you mind? I can
It could be an
explain the
error,
process.
but go ahead. It could be an error, or it could be a choice.
So I can only speak on what happened in Jackson County. I can't speak about
Right.
what might have happened in another county. But we call this we have a process within the vote by mail rules and the things that we can follow about enhancing and duplicating ballots. And at any time, let's say you're voting your ballot, you can set your pin down on the ballot, and it could put that pin prick in one of those little areas, and then you decide, oh, you know what, I think I'm going to vote this one. But believe it or not, those machines are so sensitive when they're tabulating that ballot, it could possibly pick that up as an overvote. When the election boards work together, they work in teams of 4 and a mixed party affiliation. That's very important to know that. There cannot be 3 Dems and 1 Republican, or 3 Republicans and 1 Dem. There can be 2 Republicans, 2 Dems. There can be an independent, 2 Republicans, a Dem. There can be a mix. But there cannot be any one party that has a predominant at that table without that the 4 mixed party affiliation board. And we never then they work in teams of 2. So what these teams of 2, in the process that Janice just explained, we as well use those little stickers. But what we do is they put all those problem ones, so they notice when they're doing the initial review that could have had an erasure, meaning somebody marked something and they decided later that's not what I want. They tried to erase it, but believe it or not, that little mark in there could come in and the machine could read that as a overvote. We can clearly, those 4-person and the 2 people working separately together can determine that that person meant by list mark to vote for that. And you can clearly see that they erased this one. But the machine cannot ascertain that. The machine can only read within those boundaries that's given. It could possibly pick that up as an overvote, which would not be the voter intent. So by the rules and the laws, what we can do is we can enhance. Say they did the pinprick in 1 mark, and or a little tiny mark, we can determine that's what they wanted, but we need to enhance that with that red marker. And keep in mind, our machines will read red marker, and they'll read black marker or pencils. They won't read green. So we call them, they're green light machines. They will not read green. So as additional part of this process, and as possibly being very proactive. I think we all remember when that little issue with Clackamas County happened, and as you spoke about. So what I decided when we heard about that immediately, before we even had a directive from the Secretary of State, is we changed out all of our pencils and pens and on the tables to blue ink pens. I ran to every office supply store in the county, or in Medford that night, and picked up every green pen that I could find. And we took all those pens and pulled it from every table. And I also had the board workers, there were no personal items allowed around those tables. And if a man had a pen in his pocket, those things had to be left at their lunch area. And the reason we did that was because we knew if something like this, God forbid, ever happened, we could easily pick out, because the machine will not read that green marker, and we could easily ascertain if somebody had tried to mark that ballot. And I was very open about that when that happened to my observers who were in there at that time. Now the follow-up to that, and I'll end here pretty quick, is so we have the right to enhance ballots, which sounds like the process that you were speaking about. We also have the right to duplicate ballots. If there's one that there's just no way that the enhancement process is going to work, or that you can't cover it with that little label when you can ascertain what that person meant, their intent of the voter was, then you can actually duplicate that ballot. But we have strict rules regarding duplication. The duplicated ballot gets the stamp, the original ballot gets the stamp, the board members working on it have to initial it, it gets numbered, so that we know when we go back and audit those ballots in a recount, whether it be paid for or an automatic recount, we can compare those ballots to make sure that we have two matching ballots, the original and the duplicate. And if there's ever a question, if it was duplicated correctly, you can look at those two together. So anyway, that's the process it sounds like you're speaking about, is the duplication and the enhancement process. Now the other thing to keep in mind with that is, that's why we have these teams work in 4-person boards. And actually, we go one step further than really they only have to work in 2-person boards. We do have them work in teams of 2 at the same 4-person board table. But what they do when those 2 people do their work, and they finish up with their duplication and enhancement, and then the other 2 do theirs the same, they switch. Then that other team looks at their work, and vice versa, to make sure that the voter intent has been upheld on those ballots. So that's how we do that here in Jackson County.
That's great. And I will
Sorry
say,
for taking so much time.
oh, no, that's great. I knew the duplication process as well as the enhancement process. In Washington County, they don't do any enhancements until after the election, when people can sit at the table and actually observe what's going on. And that's really nice, because then there's not any question. We had observers that said they saw them change the vote from one party to the other without a mark in the party that was eventually chosen. And that's similar to what happened in Clackamas County. So that was in 2008. We did not see it happen later on in 2010 and 11. And so we felt like the education really happened, and it was a much better process. And so I am very grateful that things are improved in Multnomah County over what they were before. I keep thinking there's the one other thing I was going to tell you about. But I'm going to go on. True to Vote, Catherine has, their initial work in Houston County came up with 35,000 ballots, registration, not ballots, that were problematic. And they worked very hard at putting that information all together, took it to the county elections clerk, and the information was released by the county clerk that this wasn't going to be acceptable in their county. Acorn had come in and registered lots of people, and if you want to hear about Catherine's experience and what has happened to her since she started this effort, she's had 18 touch points with different government agencies coming and either auditing her group, her business, or filed a lawsuit against her. And she came and spoke to the Gathering of the Eagles. I don't know if have any of you been to Gathering of the Eagles here in Oregon? Well, you might want to go to Gathering of the Eagles website and learn about that, because it's a great event. So Catherine came and told her story, and it's on our little website, electionoregon.com, and I'll show you that where that is at the end. So I'll let her explain more of all of what happened to her at that point. She got exposed in a big way to the progressive attack machine, and learned firsthand what was going on. And other people came to her and said, we're experiencing some of these problems as well. And it's people like Anita Moncrief, J. Christian Adams, John Fund, all brought a lot of experience. And so they found that, I just got this PowerPoint here today, but so I'm a little nervous about interweaving it into my talk here, but she talks about how in 1982 the New Jersey consent decree limited the Republican Party to challenge voter fraud. And so the National Republican Party won't challenge on election fraud, so they've got their hands tied and they won't do it. So that leaves any challenge to fraud against them gone unanswered. In 1993, the motor voter laws came in, and that eliminated some safeguards we had in registration. And then in 2006, the Secretary of State project was funded by George Soros, was to bring about who counts the vote. So those are some of the things that has happened. And she said there's more than 80 national groups that are out to change election laws. That's why they've got this Hydra monster thing here. You cut off one head and on a Hydra, I guess, and two pop up. It just keeps getting worse. So ACORN and a bunch of other different groups they're out to change our laws. They're focused in litigation, in funding, and in lobbying to change our election, fair, free elections, but to eliminate our rights. Let's see. So True the Vote's efforts at what they intend to do. I'm gonna just stop on that one. That's the main thing I wanted to show you there. Sorry. As you can tell, I'm not a professional. I just am a citizen. Where is it?
Are you trying to advance the slide?
I'm trying to get this onto this to the slideshow. Enter full screen. Okay. Now that's still not full screen. Maybe you can help me.
I'm not familiar with Macs, are you? Or is this a Mac?
Is it in a dual?
Oh, here we go.
Oh, is play, would that be it? Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
And then you can use this if you need to now.
So I think what we really agree is that we want fair and free elections. And let's see if we can get this to going. That's our goal as citizens. I mean, that's all we want. We want to know that our voice really is heard, that it counts, that one vote for one citizen is what we're going to get.
Will you be getting into registration?
I will. Let me see if I'm not sure.
Try that play button. Is that not working?
I don't know which button on here you want me to push. This is PowerPoint.
I took my grandsons in for registration as soon as they were old enough. And here's make sure, bring your birth certificate, your driver's license, and got there and they just answered a few questions and signed a signature, and that was it. They didn't ask anything.
Who's that?
At the election.
Well, the card would have to be filled out completely. Now keep in mind, in the state of Oregon law does not require identification to be able to vote.
Can you believe that?
So all they have to do is
But in order to vote a federal ballot, the federal portion of your ballot, you have to provide your driver's license or an ID card from the state where you're registering to vote in. If you can't provide that, then you have to provide the last 4 digits of your social. If you can't provide that, then they can provide other identifying documents.
But anything on a local level, they could.
But Oregon law does not require identification. But if you wish to vote the federal portion of your ballot, say you get a ballot, it has president on it, it has congressman, we call those HAVA ballots. If they go in to verify your signature, it's instantly going to pop us till it's a HAVA. What that does is we pull those ballots aside because they have till 8 o'clock election night to provide identification. If they do not provide identification by 8 o'clock election night, then we duplicate that ballot without the federal races. If they provide ID, then the entire ballot is counted as is. But those are ones that we have to set aside to deal with afterwards, but that is Oregon law. That's
We do
Oregon law.
mail in here, so there's no showing ID.
Well, majority of them do, but we do have a small portion that don't. But what we do with those, when they get those, we send a letter in the mail notifying them that they have not provided ID, and they will fall under that coding of HAVA. So their federal portion of the ballot will not be counted unless they provide ID. We get those every election. We have not a huge amount of those, but we do have some of those, yes.
So if I'm a registered voter, you know, if I'm a volunteer and I register a voter, am I allowed to or am I not allowed to request an ID to see if they're...
Absolutely, because you
Should I
can ask
request
them
an
to
ID?
put that on there, yes.
So if
Because
I-
they will not get to vote that federal portion of that ballot if they don't provide that.
Okay, so when you fill out the voter registration, you give your driver's license number or the last 4 digits of your social. What am I supposed to ask them for?
Just what the registration card is asking for.
Okay, and so, but I don't sign that I saw
No,
it, and
you do
so
not.
you don't know that I asked for it.
What we have a way of, in the system, it automatically validates those to their name and their date of birth.
Okay, if I
We
don't
put
have
in
a
that
driver's
information.
license though, then you don't have any signature on file, right?
Right,
So,
well,
'cause
they
this-
would not be able to, if you don't have a driver's license, you wouldn't be able to use the online registration system. Because the online registration, you
That's
have
the
to have a
DL,
driver's
has
license
to-
or an ID card.
Okay, but so when, I'm trying to think, if I registered to vote on, if I just had me register me, if I registered you, you would have to sign the voter registration.
We would not sign the voter,
No, I mean,
the
if you
voter
were-
would sign
yeah,
the
voter.
registration.
So that's what you have on file is
Then we
that
scan that card
signature.
in and that signature's
And that's
on
the
file.
card that would, so when his child registered, you would be comparing that signature with the
On the,
signature
with the signature on the ballot.
on the ballot.
Absolutely.
Why are you allowed to have 2 signatures?
2 signatures?
I
I'm not
believe-
sure what you're talking about.
I believe, I think that I heard this lady say this morning on talk radio that there is 2 signatures allowed.
Well, we have history, like if you were registered and you re-registered because you moved, then we would have the historical record on file because it's already been scanned into the system. So yes, we would have your historical registration card. And if you were a frequent mover, you might have 3 or 4, or you decide to change your party affiliation. You're going to fill out a new registration card, which would be that different signature. So we keep the historical signatures in the system. But it's not your current registration signature, but it's a historical look back.
It just seems to me if you want to ensure voter integrity, you would require an identification with the vote. I mean,
You would think so.
What's the point of not having it? I don't understand.
Because we have conflicting, we have a federal law which says one thing, and we have a state law that says another. And
Doesn't make
it all
any
comes
sense.
back to your legislature and what goes on, and that can be a very political issue, hot button issue. We as clerks have to follow the law, but we do know that we have provisions such as HAVA, which state that you're not going to be able, that part is not going to count if you don't provide that identification. So there are some safeguards. Is it perfect? There is no perfect system, but we do the best we can.
So then,
So why do you think that it's not required? I mean, what if you were to imagine a reason? Why would you think it's not
Because
required?
of partisan politics, I think there is a huge disparity between the 2 major political parties on what should be required.
Who was
And I
in
think-
power and they passed the law.
Yeah, and I think too, because when you're running for those offices, quite frankly, if you stand for one or the other, they're always thinking about getting reelected. And that's my personal opinion on it. We have the technology. It would probably take some work. There would be some money that would have to be put out for the technology, because we already put in the driver's license. We already put in the last 4 digits of the social. The next step of that would be that 4 digits of the socials in there. Why can't it link to the Social Security Administration to verify citizenship? I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, because us clerks have talked about this as well.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. In other words, if an alien had an Oregon license or ID, whatever.
Which they would be coded separately from a regular driver's license.
Yeah.
If you are not legal, if you're not a citizen, you have a different coding type of license. Right.
So if they put those numbers in, they're not going to be able to vote.
Yes. That had to do with that bill that the Secretary of State was putting out. They do have a different, it's not a type, but it's a different license that's issued from my understanding, and this is what I was told. And when we were going through this whole process of the automatic registration.
Well, you'd have to know, because if it shows up, what do you, you know?
Well, that was one of the criteria of why the clerks had concerns about that bill. We had a list of things that were concerns on our end about implementing that process. Now, the clerks are resilient. If it happened, we would work them, but we want to make sure that these concerns are met if this is going to happen.
How many states, which states or how many states actually still have a mail-in ballot and also don't require identification for state? I mean, you don't have to, don't require citizenship to vote in a state.
Well, citizenship is required. That is absolutely, you have to be a citizen to vote. But that being said, do they verify citizenship?
Right.
I believe the states that have passed those laws, from what I've read in the news, that a court has probably said that that is not the word I'm looking for. They've invalidated that process of the states. And I can't name the states that do that have passed laws concerning ID.
How many states still have a mail-in?
Almost every state has mail-in elections. Other states call them absentee voting. We are the
not all. That's just if you're
most all states have some form of absentee voting. I can't name the states
right,
that don't.
I know, but we're all absent.
No, we're vote by mail. Right.
How many states have all absentee voting?
2. Not absentee, it's vote by mail.
Well, I know.
It's Washington and Oregon, and Colorado is online to be the next.
I don't know how it is.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no, I don't know how it is in Jackson, but when I asked in Multnomah County, we are actually in practice more of a vote by ballot drop box than we are by mail. Most of the ballots come back by drop box because
in the last few days.
People like to get them in there themselves. Or yes?
Have they done like a correlation between a mail-in and fraud and going to see someone in person and fraud? Have they done a correlation to see which is a higher percentage, or if there is a relationship between mail-in and fraud and going to see someone in fraud?
I'm sure that they have, and Janice can probably speak on that as well. But, you know, we, at the local level, we don't have the resources to be able to do those type of things. What we do is those type of things are done through the chief elections official in the state, through the Secretary of State's office. I don't know if they have done that. I do know that they have prosecuted and all that, but I can't speak if an actual comparison has been done.
So you would, so let's say, for example, I'm Joe Smith. I don't want to give people my real name. So if let's say I'm Joe Smith, I go and vote. Now they're not going to put my name, Joe Smith, vote. And so if John Smith, who's dead, he votes, that's not going to raise a flag. You don't tie the vote to the population or to the rolls, to the property or to the tax rolls. So
I think maybe you can address that at the end.
Yeah. We'll get a little more into those things and how we purge people and how we handle the death list and things like that. That was a little confusing, I think, tying a couple different processes together. Good, sorry. We filled a little time while you were trying to get that set up.
I know I have a soft voice, so I'll try to put that back on. I want to know, I appreciate the county clerks. They've got one of the toughest jobs there is out there. So thank you very much for your hard work and your efforts to try to make it fair for all of us. And we do appreciate that. And when we find a good county clerk that's very responsive and wants us to have confidence in election, I just thank you so much. We all want our vote to count equally with everybody else's. That's the main thing. One vote per citizen. But how can you tell that one citizen gets one vote? You have to measure the process. If you can't measure it, you don't know. In Oregon, you're supposed to be able to vote if you're a citizen, you're 18 years of age, and a state resident. But are we verifying these requirements? As Chris was talking about, no proof of ID is required on state measures and candidates. I believe there's about, last time I checked, there were about 7,000 people in Oregon that were non-HAVA compliant. A little over 3,000 of them were in Multnomah County. And of those, about 300 something voted on an average election. That's averages. And some, I remember the Park Rose School measure, I don't remember if it was levy, what it was, but it was the school bond issue. And it passed by 6 votes. So, you know, if you wanted to game it, you don't have to offer any proof of who you are on those ballots. There's been a lot of comments about that. So you can register online with the Oregon driver's license. I wanted to show you here at the Oregon DMV, it says you can get a driver's license with legal presence. You don't have to be a citizen to get a driver's license. So if you could go online and register with your driver's license, is it possible to do that?
From what my understanding is when this proposal was put out by our Secretary of State this last legislative session, well, DMV already has, you can register to vote with DMV. This was talking about, they were talking about pulling every person who got a driver's license would automatically be registered to vote. And like I said earlier, we had a long list of concerns with that the clerk presented. Now, a piece of that is, from our understanding, what we were told by the Secretary of State's staff and the elections director was that they have a separate coding system for non-citizens. They're a different class of license than what a citizen would get. That's what we were told, and I'm just giving the information that we were told on that, because that was one of the concerns that the clerks had as well.
How confident are you that that in fact is in place?
Well, the legislation did not pass, so the automatic registration didn't, but we still have the DMV registration.
And you think they absolutely code it that way?
Well, right now, what's going on, if you haven't noticed, since 9/11, to get a driver's license anymore, you have to provide a birth record or a passport. And you have to provide a secondary piece of ID now. So for all these new people coming in, registering and all that, they have to prove citizenship to get that driver's license. The concern that the clerks had as well was, what about all the people that are currently on the rolls that don't have to provide those documentation until the next time in 10 years? I think, what is the standard license, 8 or 10 years in Oregon, unless you have a restricted license, such as for vision or another possible illness, that it would take you that long before you have to provide citizenship documentation and all that. So that was another concern that we had on our list. What do we do with these people that have not, their driver's license have not been verified for citizenship? Because that was not a requirement until the mid to late 2000s. So another concern that we had as well. That was a very good question.
The DMV website says that non-citizens, if they have a passport, can get a driver's license in Oregon.
Right, but keeping that in mind, from what our understanding, it's a different class of license. It has a different coding in the system than what a person who provided ID would have. It might, and I think it's only for like 4 years or something like that. But don't quote me on that because I'm not an expert in that.
Do you see how confusing it is? Because laws are not being followed. I mean, if you would just have normal adherence to the law, you wouldn't have all these problems. I mean, what's wrong with people that they give people who aren't even citizens driver's license?
Well, it
And then they
all
can slip
depends on your
in.
legislature and what's passed at those levels.
So what happened this last legislative session, they started out wanting to get driver's licenses for illegal aliens. And there was a lot of people objected to that. And so they got a classification of a driver's card, which cannot be used to register to vote. But it could be used to get other forms of ID, which would be HAVA compliant.
Still ridiculous.
So they could still register to vote with that other ID.
So who watches that? Say, when they do get a license and say it's through DMV?
Well, I don't think they would get a driver's license if they were here illegally. They would get a driver's card.
A card. But who's watching up at the state level to make sure there's not fraud going on up there, using those to count for
Well,
vote?
what it allows for, and we had a big problem back in the early 90s with the Robledo brothers with providing, they had a business that helped Spanish-speaking people to get a driver's license. And if you do a search, I'm not going to go into all of that, but there were 80,000 people that registered to vote through that organization. The Robledo brothers made millions of dollars, and it caused a big problem. Tennessee also allowed for illegals to get a driver's license, and they changed the law 2 years later. So the only way to really know if a person is a citizen is through their passport, naturalization papers, or their birth certificate. That's the only way. That's very strict in finding out if a person is a citizen. I don't have any hopes of getting this strict. I don't. I'm just hoping to at least have a general idea, because we don't have any idea right now. So I want to tell you about people saying, well, it's so hard for these people to get an ID. Some people are just not able to do it. Well, I want to tell you that in Mexico, this is their voter ID card. It has all kinds of information on it about this person. It's free. It's handed to anybody in the country. It's good for 10 years. And their precincts are made up of 750 people. Now, her face is blurred out on this picture, but if it was her idea, it would be very clear. So the people, when they want to vote, have to go to the local precinct that's only 750 people. Their picture is in their precinct book. It has to match the ID card that the person has to show up with, even if it's their mother. They have to have it, and that's how they vote down there. They had the roughest election process, but these people really worked hard because they wanted to overcome the corruption and have an election that would be worth counting and worth voting in. And they have a very high percentage of voting now. I wanted to point this out to you. If you're overseas, you can vote, you can register to vote in Oregon without any ID. All you have to do is declare that you're a citizen. And I find this most concerning because we have enemies. The U.S. has enemies. And if those people, and there's no law for them to be answered to, they won't have any. We can't do anything to these people in these other countries that would take advantage of this loophole we have. If they broke our law, they're safe in their country. The worst thing that could happen is if they came here and they say, oh, you were naughty, you tried to vote in our country. But if you look on line 4, it asks for their driver's license or their social security number. If you look at the instructions for line, I didn't correct it in this one, but this is the outdated one. It was 6 on the 2006, and now it's on my other PowerPoint, I had the right one in here. This is for 2013. It's changed to number 4 for the ID number. But all they have to put in there is leave it blank. Just leave the social security blank and leave the driver's license blank, and they get a number assigned to them. So all they have to do is declare that they're a citizen of the United States, and they'll be sent a ballot from now on. From now on, every. So that's a big concern that we have. Nobody's addressing this. I brought this up to the legislature several times. It's gone on. And if you see that they're exempt from HAVA law, you may want to address that. So Social Security numbers, cards are given to people that are not citizens, and you can't count on that for an ID number. I've got those back there. You can, in the application for non-citizens to get a Social Security number. Pew Research says 1 in 8 registrations is flawed. 24 million of voter registration records in the United States, about 1 in 8 are inaccurate, out of date. You know, people move every 4 years, just about anyway. 1.8 million people are dead. Chris Korboff, Secretary of State, I believe, Kansas. I have these sheets if you'd like one. This tells about a cross-state voter check between 28 states. I didn't put it in. I've got the wrong PowerPoint here, but 28 states, not all 50. And it tells you the number of people that are registered in more than one state. Now, if they only vote in one state, that's legal. But we don't know that they only voted in one state unless we check. So on Oregon, we've got 115,000 people that are registered in one of these other 28 states. And this doesn't include California. So we don't know what's going on with people going back and forth between Oregon and California, or back and forth between Washington. So you're welcome to have a copy of that. We've got, I think, 18,000 people in Oregon that are registered, also in Arizona. So that's a great concern. And also, that's only out of 84 million records, and I think there's 170 million voting records in the U.S.
So you're saying 28 states have done the comparison?
Yeah.
But nobody's doing anything about it?
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
If we wanted to know, we'd have to ask with the Secretary of State, and that takes a lot of money to get those voter FOIA requests. During this last legislative session, we worked with Oregon Citizens Lobby. Sandra will tell you about that. And Sandra was a great help, and I really appreciate it very much. We saw the national popular vote, which would change our electoral system, come up. The driver's cards for illegal aliens that passed and is now going to be a referendum. Is there a referendum called? It's a referendum? Or, yeah, it's a referendum to be put on the ballot in 2014. They were trying to get 16 years old to register. They wouldn't be able to vote until they're 18, but some of us are concerned that they would try to lower the voting age as well. We, of course, had the ballot security and accountability at HB 2199A. It passed. I brought a lawsuit with the 3 other people against the Secretary of State in his official capacity as the elections officer for not destroying those ballots on election night. And so they were trying to fix it, and now I'm most concerned because, and I would really appreciate it if you would address that part, is what is the difference between how this affects it? What are you going to be required to count compared to what you had to count before? I don't know if you want to do that now, or
Count as in?
The counting of the actual ballot process. So you have to count the number of ballots, number of envelopes, and it's changed now.
We have it's a actual form that the Secretary of State's office created, and we all have to use that standard form, and we have to account for unused ballots. We have to account for duplicated ballots. We have to account for, we keep track, that's what our boards do, of all the outer envelopes, the inner envelopes, the ballots themselves. There's a list of items that we have to keep track of for auditing purposes and for that very act about ballot security and accountability. And I can speak to that a little bit later about that.
Is it tighter now than it was before?
Yes, the rules are. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Are you keeping track of as many things, though?
We're keeping track of more. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Because we do have an actual form.
Because when I read it out, it looks
we have
like
to fill out upon certification.
That's really funny to me. the rules are tighter, but the laws have like holes like Swiss cheese. I mean, it makes no sense.
And then we also had the universal voter registration that Chris talked about that we tried to fight. And so we won some and lost some on that. This next legislative session, we're wondering what's going to come up. Will they try to further expand the iPad and smartphone and go to smartphone easy access voting? Will we be confronted with the national popular vote again? Will we be confronted with universal voter registration? I don't know what's in store for us, but please be talking to your legislators about what you want to see happen, and come join us advocate for good election law. Working with the Oregon Citizens Lobby, we're To the Vote in Oregon is the Election Integrity Committee. So unless we observe what happens, we have no idea what's going on. We want to advocate for a good process to monitor the actual election process. And I just asking for room within the office to be able to observe the process. You can see people that are open and people that are not open. So it's really great to be able to have confidence enough in your election. And by observing it, you'll know what's going on. That's the key. When I was at Multnomah County elections, I couldn't figure out what was going on with the computers myself. I wasn't smart, as you can see. I have my own, I'm not a computer expert. But Mr. McAuliffe is, he is a researcher, and he is a computer expert, and he is the one that found the Enron scandal from right in Portland, and he had his investigators looking at it, and he volunteered to come and look at what was going on in Multnomah County, and he reports on that. He gave me a big report, plus he did this video, so I'm going to see if I can bring it up.
Hello, I'm former State Representative Jeff Krupp, and this is another in our series of videos regarding voter integrity issues. And joining me today is Robert McCullough, who's a trained economist. He is an expert witness at trial court level regarding some of the issues that we're going to share with you today. He's testified in the Enron trial. Robert, thanks for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
What Robert's going to share with us very quickly is how simple and easy it is to breach the security of a computer that would be the vote counting computer in Oregon's voting process at the county level. Why don't you share with us what you're going to be showing us today?
Absolutely. A year ago, I was asked to review the security arrangements at the Multnomah Elections Office. What I found is that the votes are brought in and counted, and then they're accumulated in a normal, everyday PC, the same that you would have at home. Now, in most business and government, mission-critical computers, the computers we depend upon, are highly secure. But in our review, we discovered this was not a secure computer. In this case, what it means is you can take a device like this. This is a thumb drive or a USB stick. You can buy it, by the way, at your grocery store or the drugstore, and put a program on it. Once that program is inserted into the computer, you can actually take over the computer. You've seen that in the movies. It actually works in real life, too. So I could take this one, plug it into this computer here, and what shows up is a menu of different tools. This particular menu of tools comes right off the web. It's free. You can download it. Just look it up on Google. It's called Trinity Rescue Kit. Now, a couple of things. First is, there's a tool here for just breaking the password on the computer. That simple. So you put in your password, you think your computer is secure, but someone can actually insert this, run this Trinity Rescue Kit, and break your password. But you don't even have to work that hard. You can come down here to another tool, Midnight Commander. The Midnight Commander simply allows you to see every file on the computer, even if you have a password, and you can copy the files from this into the computer. Now, we're towards the end of the election. The election results have been accumulated on this unsecured computer. Someone brings this device over, uses one of these tools, transfers the file of their own design, suddenly the election results are different. What's the right answer? For the military or for business, when you have a mission critical computer, you secure it. You remove the ability to use the USB stick. You actually make sure that access to that computer is very tightly controlled.
So Robert, you're telling us that from the internet, you can download a program for free, like the one you've just shown us, put it on a USB stick thumb drive, and anyone with access to a master computer at a county elections office that has a USB port could walk in there. And how long would it take them to insert that USB stick and alter a vote count, remove the stick, and walk away?
Less than a minute. It's virtually automatic.
My goodness. Well, friends, I hope you found that as informative and concerning as I do. I think this is another good reason that we, the people, need to be concerned about the integrity of our voting system and demand the highest levels of security when it comes to counting of our votes. If you'd like to learn more, please go to the internet to OregonAbigailAdams.com to see this and other videos and learn how you can make a difference on this important issue. Until next time, I'm Jeff Krupp, and we'll see you for the next video.
I'd like to know if you make sure the ballots are, the unused ballots are destroyed at 8 o'clock.
That's a very good question. We have conflicting statutes. When the 8 o'clock p.m. is left from when we used to have polling place elections. When vote by mail was created, it was one of those sections that either never got addressed or changed within that statute. Because quite frankly, we get a lot of those ballots in at those drop sites up till 8 o'clock election night. And you remember earlier I was talking about the duplication and the enhancement process. That process will go on until we get all those ballots prepared to go to the machines and tabulated. And like Multnomah County does it, as Janice stated, they pull all those problem ballots aside and do them like the next day or at a later time, or have a separate board that processes those. So we couldn't possibly destroy those ballots at 8 o'clock because we're still trying to process an election. And we need those ballots because we call them ballot styles. In a primary, we could have up to 80 separate ballot styles, depending on where you live and what districts you're within. And so we have to have those to be able to work. Now, I can reassure you, we've taken a lot of steps to ensure the security of those. And every election, we're doing more to do that. I was speaking to Larry, who works in my office as a temporary election worker every election, and we appreciate him very much, that we have a lot of changes coming right now. Part of last year, we decided that if you were in our office during the presidential election, it was just, we had 90 to 100 people at any time in the lobby. There was no rhyme or reason. We have one door in and out. I don't know how that was ever approved when they approved that building for not only persons with disabilities, but for safety, for emergency. So we are actually right now, by the Board of Commissioners, have approved us to redo our front end of the elections office, to create an entrance door and an exit door, and to be able to use crowd control. Now, why do I bring that up? That's part of our security measures. We're going to try to tighten down that whole front area. We're going to have swing doors, but they're going to be locking swing doors. The other secondary piece of this, we've put in cameras as well. The secondary piece of this is we would store our unused ballots in one of our locked storage rooms. And it's our work area. It's a separate work area. And the only people that had access to that were my full-time staff with keys. And this has happened since I became county clerk. We realized we need to lock those down better. So my full-time staff has keys in there. I have two of my, basically their chief workers that handle the election boards. And those two are allowed access with somebody with a full-time staff with one of those keys. We change all those keys out at election time. So the way they're locked down at a normal time, I call it elections trim. We take and change out all those locks. So only my staff has keys to those areas. Maintenance can't get in anywhere because we've locked down those areas. The second piece of that remodel is we're putting up a wall. It's a big workroom. What we're doing is we're having a wall constructed between to make two rooms so that we can further lock down those unused ballots with a completely separate key into that room. And that's only going to be limited by my full-time staff and myself as well. And if anybody wants to access those, they're going to have to come to one of us to be able to access that room.
That's great.
So that is what we're currently doing right now. We're taking an RFP and request for bid to get that project started in December so that we're well ahead of the primary election.
I think I figured out the voting process in the state. See, the Secretary of State is a liberal, and she's very politically driven, so therefore she adjusts the laws to accommodate her philosophy. Once they adjust the laws, then they tighten down to enforce what they've done to the laws. So it's a perversion, basically, what you're talking about.
You know, I'm an elected county clerk, and we have to follow what the law says.
I
And that's what I've
understand,
been elected
but I
to do.
understand what the law says.
Yeah.
I'm just explaining how I see it, that's all.
And you are afforded your opinion, that's a great thing about where we live.
Well, I have my
I think it's great that you have such control over the ballots, and they have to come to you. That's very admirable.
And we're trying to make that better.
Yeah.
And Larry's worked there for a lot of years and knows that every election we have, we learn about how to better do that too.
Right.
So when I was
How
at,
long do you keep them in case there's a question or something that comes up and they do audits and et cetera? How long is this?
The ballots have to be kept for quite some time, and
2 years.
depending on the election cycle, right, 2 years, depending on if it's a federal election or if it's a local election. We also have to keep all those envelopes, the inner and outer envelopes as well. Those don't have to be kept as long. I think there was a provision that just changed the outer envelope has to be kept the same time as the ballot does, I believe now. I think it's 2 years. Just on the outer end, the signature envelope. The security envelope can still be destroyed soon thereafter, maybe, I'm not sure if 6 months or, depends on the election. But there's all kinds of rules concerning that. So sorry about that.
Catherine, you spoke about a lawsuit, and I think it was Kate Brown that was sued for poor election.
for not following the election law.
Right, and you lost. Have things changed any?
Well, the legislation changed to favor the secretary's method of doing things.
That's what I thought.
So I don't think there's a whole lot we need to have put into the security plan of the elections office other than the keys. Everything should be open as much as possible. There were some things I thought that we should be concerned about, but the public should still be able to have some representatives to monitor that process. When I went in 2008, we saw the garage doors to the downstairs go up and down as people passed by. People could just, they finally came and changed the code on that. So that was one of the things we found. I came in one morning and found that the back door had been left open. They had somebody from the security office come down and was investigating why the key card was unlocked on that door. That was election morning. Another time, I've got a lot of things going through my head here right now. I'm trying to, there was something that happened almost every election. Something happened. I mean, there's a fire drill in the last election. Get all the observers out of the building. I mean, that just doesn't look good. I mean, I don't know why we had window washers on election day coming in, and they were going throughout the building. One of the things I thought was really bad, we got, we had the key card log, we FOIA'd that, and we found people just appearing in one room, and they didn't always show the movement because people would hold the door for each other, so a number of people would go through and you wouldn't know who was in and out of the room. But after the election, there was a recount done, and we found that there were 2 accesses to the room that held the ballots. And that's why I said it's so good that you have that tight code control, because it was called Red Room Key 10 and Red Room Key 4. And I don't remember which one was which that went in there. So I asked to see the log of who had those keys that day, and I was told there's no log. Now, If there was a log and they just wanted to have it be part of the secret security plan and just not tell me, I don't know. But it should be accessible, there should be one for first thing. And it should be, we should be able to know who's accessing our ballots and who can, change them. I was concerned that on the old system, when we went out and we voted at the precincts, the ballots had a seal put over them by the people that put those ballots in there. After the vote by mail, the seal no longer had any signatures on it. It just was a seal, a piece of tape. And we asked why there weren't signatures on it. They said because they don't do it until 3 weeks after the election. So for 3 weeks after they're counted in this Unity machine, they're sitting in that room. And if you don't know who's going in and out of that room, if there was an electronic problem with the Unity machine and you went to verify it with the recount, people had access to that room. You don't know if it got changed in the meantime with the ballots. So to eliminate that, when those ballots go through the Unity machine, they should be sealed and signed by the person who put them in there so that you don't have to go back. It should be one time. And so I'm concerned about that counting, the recounting and the counting. If it's not open to the public when it's done that way. And so it leaves doubt. The USB port is unsecured. It's open throughout the election cycle. It has a plug over it until the election day, but then after that, the USB drive is open. And he shows on this video how you can insert a program using a USB that would change the election outcome. And so we needed to have a lot of security over the Unity machine. And all of that is out of our knowledge as citizens. We don't know what they're doing there. One of the volunteers that's also a computer expert said that super glue was about the best remedy for that Unity machine for the USB drive. So the electronic security needs to be addressed still. I don't know what I'm doing here, so I'm done.
Do you have anything to do with that at all, the electronic part, or?
I am not an information technology
Yeah,
expert,
so
no,
you're
but
at
we
the
do have
mercy
we have the Unity software, which is, it actually, the machines tabulate separately. We download those onto a zip drive, which is very old technology. Election technology is old before we can get it because of all the federal approvals it has to get. And then we download that into the Unity software, which tabulates the results from all 4 machines into the Unity software. Yes.
So then you got the results from the machine, and you got the ballots. Is there any way you correlate the two to make sure what he's talking about?
What goes to the machine, goes to the tabulator, has to match what the boards have tabulated on their paper sheets by hand. They don't tabulate how you voted.
Yeah.
They just take the individual ballots and say, okay, there's a stack of 100. So when we put that through the machine, it needs to equal that 100. If it doesn't, then we take and look at if it was a jam, if there was something that happened within that, and then we'll take it back up to the board to have them recount the actual ballots, just the number of ballots, to make sure that there wasn't a discrepancy in their number. The machine counted correctly and they miscounted. So those things are resolved at that level. What's come through into the machine based on their tally counts, and the machine has to match that.
And does each batch, do you stop right there and make sure?
Yeah, we do them they're done by precinct, and we call them a run. So like we get our first 10,000 ballots in, and then what we do is they're split between multiple precincts. So the boards are working, we've already pre-sorted them with our ballot sorter, just preliminary processes, signature verifications done, and then the boards take the actual secrecy envelopes out, then they take the ballot out of the regular envelope, those are all saved. They tabulate those numbers, and then they actually go through and inspect the ballots themselves. And then they tabulate all that. They have audit sheets that stay within that box of ballots for that particular precinct they're working on. There could be, say, 1,000 ballots in that particular run, because we call a run when we go through all precincts, and then we start over at the first precinct again. Because as we go through the elections process, we keep getting in more and more ballots of mixed precincts. So, yeah. So it's just, we just keep doing that process until
So
we're
do
done.
you wait until all that precinct is in until you put it in the Unity machine
No.
then? And-
No. That's how we get the first, like on election night, the 8 o'clock release is the first run of results that we get.
Sorted by precinct.
Well, they've already been pre-sorted by precinct, yeah.
I just was going to say, my name is Janice Dysinger, and my email is janice@dysinger, dysinger.info, if you want to get a hold of me. If you want to sign up with True to Vote, go to truetovote.org and sign up as a volunteer. I'll get your information, we'll connect, and I would love to have you as volunteers. There's some information back at the back table. You can sign up there if you want to just have me get a hold of you and give you any of the information we have here tonight.